where they are.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Shall we roll?
Yeah, let's try it.
All right.
Let's try it.
Sweet. So, Ed, first of all, thank you very much for joining me today.
Thank you.
How would you introduce yourself to those that don't know you and obviously your firm?
Yeah, so Delve Architects, I guess we're 8 years old. We specialise in bespoke sort of one-off houses and education projects. So we've got sort of two sort of distinct sides of the business. I set up with a close friend of mine, Alex. We've known each other since we were sort of 10 years old. We went to school together. So it's funny how this, for us, has started out as a sort of slight in-joke in our art classes where we studied together, to then 20, 30 years later founding a practice.
So it started very young in a way. How old were you when you realised this is what you like to do?
Yeah, so my family don't have any sort of background in architecture. My mum's a teacher. My dad sort of studied chemistry and then kind of went more into kind of bio sort of chemistry sciences. My two brothers are doctors. So I kind of had my own sort of personal route where I think art and graphic design sort of stood out as the subjects that I clearly really enjoyed. I think I probably had numerous sort of conversations with career advisors where we sort of talked about, a kind of a fine art degree sort of route, where that could ultimately kind of lead to. And I think in the end, actually, I sort of landed on architecture. It was an initial sort of 3 years that could then open up, further doors. So I guess it is a subject where, I have friends that did the first 3 years and then have gone into set design, or actually sort of switched over into construction, and suddenly, there's all those different kind of levels to it, aren't there? So I think initially wasn't totally 100% sure of what I wanted to do, but it just felt like a natural sort of nice step. And then there was this little group within our art class. There was me, there was Alex, there was a close friend of ours called James, who, we would all joke about it and what would we call ourselves? And we obviously had no understanding of what an architect is or does at that point. But it was it's a nice thing to kind of think back on and think that's maybe where this sort of seed kind of grew.
Yeah, it's always funny in a way when you think when and how you started. For me, for example, when I was so silly, but I guess it was a bit of a call. We were developers, between developers and design and build back home in Italy. And I was 14 years old when I told my father, oh, I love this. And he said, great, you're going to site. But that really process of me right away, in a way, understanding that I love really construction and everything that was around it. Because at the end of the day, me and him were used to do all the design in the office and then, going through all the planning stages and so on and so forth, and pass it on to my uncle, who was the builder, let's say, the contractor. At a very young age, I don't see myself doing anything else. And I was very clear that although I didn't understand the industry, and to be perfectly clear, when I was going on site, the only thing I was doing is take that thing from there and move it over there. And I was just getting annoyed and saying, why? Can't you do it yourself? Without realizing really how everything on site, and especially within this industry, there's process behind, and there's, to get to C, you need to go through B and A. And but as I said, even for me, it was a very young age, and at the time I had no idea what having a business meant. It was just, fun. But as I grew, then, the passion remained, and till this day, if you asked me 5 years ago, I wasn't planning to start a company, but then I did.
Yeah, we were the same, or kind of I was the same. That I'm sure probably people describe me as a little bit of a daydreamer. It is interesting. You get so many different types of people, and there are planners that sort of need to know their life sort of stages, and I think I probably, on reflection, just take things day by day. You sort of see what opportunities kind of come up and kind of roll with it. And so I think I mean in sort of reflecting back into sort of architecture, it's a long course, sort of 7 years, that first 3 years, it was probably the first time, so I studied up in Manchester. My family, I grew up in Buckinghamshire, so just outside of London. The first real time of being away in the middle of this sort of city centre. I mean, Manchester is a great place. So actually it probably took me kind of 3 years just to kind of get used to what was sort of happening. I guess the university is an important stage to just make friends and learn a little bit more about yourself. And then I think that sort of first year in industry, so I worked for quite a large sort of commercial practice that did both commercial and education. This was in that sort of 2008 period where the recession was about to sort of happen. So I think it was very much just, can you get a job? So, take what you get given and just try your hardest within that year. And I think what kind of came out of it is after that year, I kind of suddenly realized, actually, this is something that I really do enjoy. I actually do have a passion for this. I think, I think within any sort of conversation, I could find the elements of design that I could, put my focus on and attention to. And then coming back into that part two, suddenly I think I had that little bit of boost of confidence that, this is something that I could do. But still, I don't think I ever really thought about being a business owner.
So how did Delve come about?
Yeah, so there's a little sort of sad sort of aspect to Alex and I's history. So originally, as I mentioned, we were three, and our friend James, so he sadly passed away in 2014. So it probably has taught Alex and I that you have to kind of grasp hold of opportunities. And it probably was one of the reasons why we didn't put our name on the kind of company title and the headlines, because actually we wanted to kind of resemble who we are individually, but then as a group of three, we all kind of had the same kind of characteristics, and it probably was why we're such a tight kind of group of friends. So I think Alex and I both found ourselves, so we'd never worked together. Alex was in a much larger practice of kind of 80 or 90. I was in a much smaller practice of 16 at the time in Notting Hill. And I think we both felt that we were just in a moment where we wanted a little bit more control over the direction and the types of projects we worked on. I think we both knew that we had a passion for education, and we really believed and saw the value that design can bring to education and to children's lives. And so we kind of sat down and started talking about it and sort of saying, why don't we give it a go? And we planned. So I think we didn't just jump into it. So we actually spent a long time on finding the word.
That's interesting. Sure. Guide us through the process really of starting.
Yeah, we did we got introduced to this really interesting kind of word game where I think there was sort of 30 or 40 bits of paper on the table. Each of them had a word, and there was sort of a written description behind. And it was a process where you sat opposite sides of a table as we are now. You started a stop clock, and I think we gave ourselves 10 minutes to reduce the 40 words down to 4, and we both had to be in agreement about it. And in the end, we narrowed it down to, I think it was motivator, artist, opportunity seeker, and humble. And I think we both agreed that this is sort of who we are, and this is what we want to sort of project as a company. If we were going to take something forward, we wanted to have we wanted it to have the values that we sort of truly kind of hold dear. So, humble, we don't take ourselves too seriously. We want to be friendly and approachable. We want to try and help people. Opportunity seeker, we'll take, every day there will be opportunities to talk to new people, to kind of grasp hold of situations. And we're not going to kind of hold back. So we're going to kind of lead, and if an opportunity comes about, we're going to kind of grab it with both hands. Artist, we both are interested in design. So, we are both designers at heart. And again, I guess that is that kind of core value. And then motivator, we want to kind of get people excited about the subject. So again, we kind of believe in what we do.
Yeah, and share that same passion, obviously, and reflect what you do. It's not just for the sake of running a business, it's because it's something you believe in.
Exactly. Yeah. And then, so we didn't have the word. So I think everyone does the same thing. I'm not sure what your journey was with your with your name, but you sit down and think, okay, could we set something up here? What should we call it? And you start sort of just chucking words out. And actually, I think we needed to go through that process because it was meaningless. These things didn't represent sort of who we are, or there was no connection. It wouldn't mean anything to a prospective client. So then I think that's where we kind of landed on, okay, we really actually need to find something that resembles sort of who we are. And then I think within those sort of 4 words of sort of opportunity seeker, artist, it was all about exploring, unraveling, taking someone's brief and really kind of diving in. And then I think it was Alex actually that, in us talking about artist, explorer, design, he kind of landed on Delve, and he emailed me. We still have the email chain where he said, what do you think about Delve? And it just, as soon as you saw it, you're like, okay,
that works. That's nice.
I think we've got something there. And we've been very, very careful in recognizing that our values need to kind of drive who we are and the sort of the actions that we take, but then also it needs to drive the kind of behavior of the business. And I guess if we get the two right, then we have this consistent brand that will, I guess outwardly reflect well. So we put a lot of time and thought into that.
And fast forward to the first project as Delve. How did that go?
Yeah.
Or how did that came really to the business?
Come about. So we both sort of spoke to our separate companies and said, could we both go down to sort of 1 day a week? So we agreed. We sort of personally sort of shook hands and said, let's try this for a year. No pressure. If one of us wants to kind of walk away at the end of it, it hasn't worked, but let's try it for a year. And the first thing that we did, and it probably is a big bit of hopefully it's some good advice, we sort of shouted about it as much as we could. So we hired a pub and we got loads of business cards, we put them on piles in the different tables, and we just invited as many people as we could, because one, it should be sort of celebrated. It's a big jump to take. To start up a company.
Scary.
It's scary. So, sometimes people don't probably recognize the steps that they're taking. So, we invited friends, we invited family, we invited old colleagues, and then sort of encouraged them to bring their friends along. And we got quite a nice group, and we just make sure at the end of the day, at the end of the evening, people took home a card. And then again, I guess ultimately for a business to succeed, when there's an opportunity, someone needs to be thinking of you. And it just so happened that someone that came a few days later emailed and said, actually, my boss is thinking of something. Could I pass her your details? I have your business card from that event. And we obviously said, of course. So I guess is what a lot of people know in the industry, private residential is the slightly kind of easier sector to get into. I mean, we obviously had the knowledge. It was my background for the last sort of 15 years of working in London. So we sort of knew that we had that skill. And then this sort of education sector was something that we were really trying to put together a business plan as to how we can make strides to kind of get into it. So I guess we're lucky with 2 of us that there were sort of 2 people actively pounding the pavements and trying to win the work and then also delivering it. And for the first couple of months, we worked part-time. I think Alex did a Wednesday, I did a Friday, to try and give that illusion of constant activity. And luckily, we managed to kind of get the wheels to turn and eventually, so we've always taken things as a very cautious sort of step-by-step sort of process. So Alex went full-time, and then I think sort of September 2018, I went full-time. Right. So suddenly there was the 2 of us there. We knew we had a pipeline of work to support the 2 of us, but we needed to sort of just keep it going and it's all about momentum, isn't it? And I guess fast forward sort of 7-8 years, we're now 12 in an office in London Bridge. So it's definitely been a journey. It's we set up a company, and we've had Brexit, we've had American politics. The world is.
Have you guys been affected first by Brexit and then a few years after by COVID, obviously.
COVID, I think, put the brakes on everything. I guess
Yeah.
everyone needs to just sort of accept that. I think we would have, so we were in a co-working unit in Peckham in South London. We probably would have moved out of there and made the move more into central London, I think, in 2020, had it not been for the pandemic. So I think it probably delayed a level of progress, probably for about a year, you know. I probably don't say sort of pat Alex on the back enough. So I actually went on paternity leave in March 2020. So my partner had a baby, had a daughter, and so I had left. I was out, and then obviously the lockdown came.
Yeah.
And Alex had to, you know, back there. I guess this is how things change because everyone's on laptops now. Everyone is much more sort of flexible and fluid. You know, we were still on big desktops. So he somehow managed to coordinate everyone's big iMacs into taxis, get everyone sort of set up at home. And that's what I sort of came back to after my sort of 2-3 weeks off. And I guess at that period, it was scary. For that first 3 months, no one really knew, you know, what was going to happen. Was the world ending?
Yeah.
And so I think you just had to, luckily construction continued.
Yeah. Even for me, so COVID obviously affected me because I was supposed to start the business 2019, but effectively I started in September 2021. So a year and a half, almost 2 years later. Although I registered the company, unfortunately, I was dealing with a client that wanted to refurbish their house in South Kensington, but obviously as the pandemic hit, everything stopped, as we know. And as I officially started back to work on the company in September 2021, my very first project, going back to what you said earlier about, sharing information with everybody as much as possible. My very first client came randomly from, he basically changed job completely. So he was a goldsmith originally, and I was helping him out. This was, I think it was 2018 as well. I was helping him out finding a space where he could actually work and melt gold and work on his business here in the UK. And I found him a place here, actually London Bridge. That ended there. Then a couple of years later, 2021, he approached me again and he just sent me a message out of the blue. I just pop it up. I was like, who this guy is? And he just said to me, "Hi Simone, I hope you're okay and I hope you're still in London. I'd like to talk to you." This random message, didn't even have his number anymore. And I was like, can I just ask who he is? Who this is? And he said to me, "Oh, I'm, so on and so forth. And I'm starting a business again in London and I need another space and I was wondering if you could help." And I was like, funny enough, I just started my company. And, fast forward to where we are now, he opened a ice cream shop in central London, in Soho. Being very successful. He opened one in Barcelona and is trying to open another one next year here, the second one in London. But just so randomly, a guy that I helped, 3 years before I started the company. And I guess that goes back to what you try to deliver to your clients or to everyone that you deal with, that as long as they see the value in what you bring to the table and how you will eventually try to safeguard and protect them and help them, will eventually come back, doesn't it?
Yeah, I know that there's always an interesting discussion on luck. And, you go to talks. I've been to talks at the RABA about sort of small practices. And, I think you go there hoping to glean some knowledge as to how to get to that next project. And the amount of stories that you hear about a phone call, as you say, where something has happened out of the blue. And it used to really frustrate me because you used to think, I can't use that. That's not knowledge that I can build a sort of company on. And I think over time I've realised that actually the thing to focus on is being there to take the phone call, or to put yourself into an uncomfortable position that might lead to something. So actually, if you sort of sit back and wait for the phone to ring, it probably will never ring.
Yeah.
But if you go out there and try and make things happen, something will happen. Like we've had some really sort of odd sort of scenarios where, so actually the first education project that we won as a practice, Alex had gone to a developer talk. I think he sat next to 2-3 different architects, talked to them, explained sort of who we are, said that we had these 2 sort of sectors that interest that we were trying to get into, and probably talked at length about education and our passions. And 2 weeks later, one of those architects phoned him up and said he'd been offered by a friend to do a private nursery fit out in Parsons Green. He wasn't interested. It wasn't something as a sector he wanted to do. And he had, 2 weeks before, met Alex. He had his business card, remembered what Alex had said, and asked him if he'd wanted to make that connection. And obviously we said yes. And that was our first private nursery. There is luck, but actually Alex put himself into that uncomfortable position. He went to that talk by himself and tried to speak to as many people as possible about who we are and what we do. So actually you have to sort of focus on the bit that he did rather than the bit that he didn't do. But there's been times where we had a new inquiry about I think it was a fit out of a pizza restaurant, and we weren't quite sure if it all sort of stacked up, but we said let's sort of follow it up, and he went to meet them. He accidentally turned up a little bit earlier when we were standing outside the unit, and the owner of the commercial unit next door came out to just ask why he was sort of hanging around. And he had obviously politely explained that he was an architect. He was waiting for a client that was looking at a commercial unit. It turned out that the person that came to speak to him was a nursery owner who was also looking at a commercial unit to open up a new nursery. He gave them a business card, and we actually have ended up working with that client 3 times now. So nice. It's interesting how the spider's web sort of expands with projects.
I struggle with the concept of luck, and obviously it's opposite. It's you need to make your own luck in a way, and if you don't try, even as a business owner, going back to what you said earlier, that you still need to adapt. You need to be mindful that if you're running a company, you need to be able to first of all select and understand where the opportunities are coming from, and if that can potentially lead to something larger, whether it's a further collaboration down the line or whether the client has bigger dreams that won't then do other things, just like you said now. Alex met this client that ultimately led you to another 2 additional projects. So it's that flexibility that as a business owner, I think people should keep or be mindful of.
Sure. So we, when we made the decision to set up, so I had actually only worked for two practices, I think. Alex maybe 2 himself. So we kind of knew that we probably didn't have the depth of experience in the industry, and so we needed to get out there and ask for advice.
Yeah.
So we actually did start messaging different practices and just asking if we could just take them for a coffee, just to understand the challenges they faced, what successes they found, and what things to try and avoid. Obviously, a lot of people ignore you, but actually 1 or 2 are very friendly, very open, and more than happy to give you an hour of their time, which we really appreciate. And hopefully, I think we would also return the favour if anyone does ever kind of get in contact with us. But I think in doing that, we realised that we needed to write a business plan. And so again, alongside the branding, we wrote a business plan. So
and that's how long after you started the company?
Day one.
Oh, right.
So we wanted to have a piece of paper that we used as a working document. So as well, I think sometimes people write a business plan and then put it to one side and almost it's a tick box. I've done that now, so I
maybe
don't
you just needed to open a bank account or something.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas what we did is we used it to plan, and again, it's really interesting to reflect back. So we wrote a business case for year 1, 2, 3, 5, and 10. And it turns out that we've followed it to the T to this day. I'm not sure exactly how, but in putting in writing what your aims are, so what types of projects do you want to work on? So, I guess within our sort of residential sort of portfolio, sustainable design, one-off houses, new build opportunities. I guess there's a certain sort of project value. We're both aware of kind of construction costs as they are now, so you sort of know a certain bracket that you're sort of aiming for. And then separately, education and, say, commercial work. What type of projects do we want to work on? Who is working on those projects at the time? Who is the design team? So who are the project managers? Who are the interior designers? Who are the service engineers and structure engineers, project managers? And start, in writing it down, we realized who we needed to sort of reach out to again, kind of tell them that who we are and that we're here, and just to start to build kind of relationships within those sectors. And then having, I think, the year 1, 2, 3, sort of 5 and 10, we also talked about sort of teams. So our business plan, we sort of divided it into the 5 Ps that people talk about. So you sort of set out the types of projects that you want to work on. To work on the projects, what sort of team do you need? So what size of practice do we ultimately want to be? Do we want to be a 100-person practice, or actually do we want to stay relatively small? Luckily, I think, again, Alex and I are both in agreement that we'd like something quite small to maintain a level of control. Premises, so where do we want to kind of locate ourselves? I guess PR and marketing, like how are we going to talk about ourselves and again outwardly sort of project ourselves to the market. And so within those sort of sections, we're able to kind of really get into it. And then month on month and then year on year, we have it with us as it's a working kind of document. And that was something that we were told time and time again to just keep opening it up and questioning why, if a certain project comes to your door, is it right for you? Is it a project that's going to maybe be a stepping stone to something slightly larger? Is it going to be a portfolio piece that could get you some really interesting sort of PR and marketing to obviously help the growth of the business? Or ultimately, is it going to make you profit to be able to support a team to then maybe go after the other two? So, it's been a really useful document to have. And again, I think that is it's a key bit of advice to take the time to consider what it is that you're doing, to make sure sort of the reasons behind what you're doing are right. So and I guess ultimately you kind of need, after the first year, you probably know if this is right for you or wrong for you. And we were willing to take the challenge because I think we could see that a year trying, actually, on our CVs, if we both turned around and said, you know what, we prefer to be working for other for other practices rather than the pressures that comes with running a business, then actually, there wouldn't be a kind of a gap in your CV that would ultimately sort of harm the two of us. So we're willing to take the challenge. But then, after the first year, we thought, we're going for it. So we haven't looked back.
Full on. And if I can ask, which was the project that really made you realize, right, it's time to scale up? Was there a project particularly that was just a multiple project that came all at once? Yeah,
I guess we've taken things sort of step by step. So we've always believed that we want to be financially secure to make a hire. You hear stories in the industries of people hiring and firing, and it sounds so brutal. So again, as part of our values,
unfair as well to the people that potentially join you.
Yeah, exactly. So we've always been quite cautious, but we did one project. So we did a small residential project, and it was a quick kind of learning curve because we realized that Alex and I can't really work together. Only in the who takes the lead, it sort of didn't really there was no sort of chain of command, or Alex is the project architect and would I be the drawer? It sort of just didn't make sense. And as well, what we wanted to have clear communication to the client. So when an email came in, are you going to pick that up or shall I? And we very, very quickly realized that it just wasn't, something wasn't quite right. So Alex had his projects and sort of I had mine. Obviously we were sitting side by side, so there's dialogue, there's communication, the sharing of ideas, but ultimately sort of Alex was leading on his and I was leading on mine. And so I think quite quickly we both needed help, drawing, modeling, presentations. You suddenly think, wow, I'm doing an InDesign presentation when I really need to be out winning work. People sort of tell us, again, a really good piece of business advice is that you win a project, you immediately go start looking at the next one.
Yep.
You can't wait around to halfway through. So it has to keep going. So again, I think we recognise that there are tasks that you shouldn't be doing to allow you to focus on the things that you should be doing. So, running your business, all the cash flow and the accounts, insurances, I guess dealing with, as the team has grown. So we've, sort of all the HR and sort of team morale. So we've naturally found, actually within Alex and I think our personalities want to cover different aspects. So, we've agreed that sort of Alex is much more, is going to spend a lot more time looking at the cash flow and the accounts, whereas I think I'm sort of doing the marketing and HR and trying to sort of manage the team. So and that just, again, naturally I think suits our personalities. Well,
I guess also with two business partners, each needs to have defined roles. You're obviously both very competent, very professional and very knowledgeable about what you do, but that goes beyond running a business. So finding your role within the company is something that is not just the people that you hire that have roles, is obviously also the director that needs to lead and show. Obviously, it's just me within my company, but I've had not so pleasant experience where there was overlaps between directors and someone was always trying to impress somebody else, and us basically that were working with them and trying to run the business and help it grow didn't really understood who we needed to talk to for certain issues. So having those clear roles also helps, in my opinion, the people that work with you as a business.
I think so. I hope so. We also have sort of a silent partner. So again, quite quickly as we set up, a friend of ours asked us to help them with a residential extension, and he is an accountant. And so we said, could you give us a year of your sort of time and skills, and we'll do all of this for free.
Yeah. And
the insight that he gave us, so monthly breakdowns, reviewing the kind of cash flow projections, patterns that he's seeing within our invoicing, was so invaluable that I think after that first year we said, you have to come on board. And he did, and now he's a shareholder, and it probably is one of the sort of the greatest sort of parts
decision
of our the greatest decision that we've made, I think, in asking him to come on board, and just everything, any hire, can we do this? Is it worth investing in the business? We can ask him those questions, and
exactly that, asking the question. Obviously, just because you own a business doesn't mean you know everything.
No,
there's always going to be a professional that knows what he's doing, because that is his job or her job. Asking those questions is something. Going back, I wanted to tap quickly into something that you said initially when you started the Delve and the company, that you went out and asking questions and asking for advice to a lot of people. I did exactly the same thing. Obviously with LinkedIn, messaging people around, just be ignored. But then again, I'm not someone that really is bothered if someone doesn't come back to you. It's fine. But I've seen now, even with being a member of the BIID, last year they organized a beautiful event with all the interior designers that we're sharing information and asking questions and so on and so forth. And I met two of them. One was really scared in a way because she felt lost within the industry, and she was like, but I don't know what to do. I don't know if I'm doing something wrong. I don't know if I'm doing something right. I deal with the client that's fine, but then I'm also struggling with maybe the contractor or maybe this, maybe that. So, and I said to her right away, just call me up, okay? Let's finish this. Call me tomorrow. Because you need to start asking questions to someone that might have been already where you've been before, and that could potentially guide you and lead you through, or help you make the right direction, or help you understand, not necessarily making a decision for you, but help you understand if what you're doing is actually right or wrong. And I've been doing that, sporadically, I'd say. Obviously, every now and then, I'm still in touch with this colleague, let's say. But it's that, ask the question. Don't be afraid to say, I don't know. The client doesn't have to, forget about the client for the time being. Just think about yourself. You need to grow as a business and as a person. And if you don't ask the question to someone that might have already been there, that you think might be able to help, you get stuck. So it's for me, it's one of the most fundamental things. Ask questions. Just don't be afraid.
Yeah.
And even what's the worst thing? No, or I can't help you.
Yeah. No, I think I learned that from my two sort of previous directors, that it's not a sign of weakness to ask a question, and I think it was really refreshing to sort of see them both. I guess in construction, sometimes you're around a table with a lot of people, and there are probably people that know a lot more than you. So actually, there's no point trying to sit there and pretend that you know everything.
Yeah.
And it is fine to put your hand up and say, I'm sorry, you've just said something that I don't quite understand. Can you break it down for me? And that's not a weakness.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think the architecture sort of sphere, the world, I think smaller practices are definitely starting to talk more and to try and sort of support each other. I think maybe there's a bit of a realization that every practice is different just because of the people that run it. So everyone has a slightly different angle or a way of designing or completing a project. And I guess ultimately clients are just trying to find the right fit for their project. So yes, there is sort of competition, but actually, supporting each other doesn't really harm anyone, ultimately. So actually, if you do meet someone that, just needs some time to just sort of talk things through, why wouldn't you sort of help and support them?
Yeah.
I probably couldn't do it without a business partner, I have to say. So, as a sole practitioner, there is so much that you're trying to cover. So it's it's a lot to take on. So I think, again, in reflecting, one of the greatest sort of decisions made is doing it with a business partner and a friend. So someone that I really trust. I think we can have a go at each other. If we need to.
Someone you can have an argument with, and then it just dies there.
Yeah, but then and actually we don't argue sort of that much. So I think we're both on the same sort of wavelength. And the one thing I think maybe we both didn't realize is that you spend so much time together during the week that actually, at weekends, I'm sure Alex says all the time, he does not want to talk to me. So, we were friends first, and then now we're kind of business partners. And so actually, whether or not we put enough thought into that kind of impact on the relationship, but I think going into business is scary. If you have people that you can surround yourself that you really trust, I guess it's the first step to
makes it easier. Yeah.
Yeah.
How fast was the jump from just the two of you to 12?
We've been slow. I guess the pandemic. So we had. I think we were just 5. I think we had just hired our sort of 5th or 6th employee, who actually was from New Zealand, and she made the right decision that she could see that something was happening. It was such a shame, because I think they were sort of 2 months into working with us. She realised something was happening, and I think she got a call from home to say, if you don't come back now, New Zealand are closing the borders. You're not coming back in, which is such a strange thing to say now, isn't it? When in reflection of sort of what happened and what people went through. But so I think we were 5 or 6, and then we sort of I think one individual had to leave. So what was that? Sort of 2020, 21. And then we've slowly kind of grown since then. But I think it's in taking on the bigger projects. I guess there's this sort of waves. I'm not sure with interior design if it's the same, but with architecture, you do the sort of 3-year degree, you do a year in industry, you go back to study for 2 years. So there's always these sort of peaks and troughs of sort of higher sort of part ones, and then they either do 1 or 2 years and then go back to uni. So you sort of have to replace them. And then sometimes it's actually, do we replace them with a slightly more experienced person who I guess won't be then going back to university. So suddenly they're there as an established individual within the practice, and suddenly they need support. So we've grown. We've got 4 teams now. So there's sort of Alex and I. Say an inquiry comes in, either Alex answers it or I answer it, and that, depending on the location and if it's sort of right for the 2 of us, we'll probably lead on that project after making the first call. But so with underneath our sort of structure, we've got four teams, each with an architect and then an architectural assistant. And I guess we've kind of just slowly grown. There's been opportunities where someone's gone back to uni for part 2 and then got back in contact and said, I'm finished. And we couldn't say no. We knew we knew that they just suited the practice and again our value and ethos, and so we had to sort of just again take a bit of a chance and back ourselves to make it work with a slightly bigger team. So it's been incremental. I think I've heard stories of people setting up companies, taking out a big loan, getting the office, getting the staff and the IT equipment, and then going out and finding the work. And it might work, it might not. We have been the opposite. We've been very slow and sort of steady, and we want to make sure that there's that long-term sort of cash flow projection there to be able to, hire someone and be able to kind of give them the long-term sort of career that they're looking for.
Yeah, of course. When hiring people, would you I don't know if you can share this, but when you're hiring an architect, someone to work with you guys, how much is important their knowledge compared to their approach to a project, let's say? Trying to understand if basically knowledge is everything or comes first, having a full depth on everything they do, or whether their approach to go get it type of thing, it's more important sometimes.
Yeah, I think in the end, surely everyone will want the approach. So if someone comes to us and sits down, the portfolio of projects might be slightly different than what we've done. You can look at it, can't you? So the images that they've created, the thought process. Are they able to talk about it? Are they excited about talking about it? But then ultimately, does the passion sort of come through? Are they interested in the subject? Do they want to work on these projects? Do they want to learn? I'm still learning. No one knows it all, and sometimes we've definitely had situations where you've interviewed someone, and within the first couple of minutes, you just think, I'm not sure if you're right. You try and give feedback afterwards to help as kindly and as softly as possible. But I think you want someone to, as a small business owner,
because I guess it also needs to reflect, when they'll eventually deal with the client, they also need to reflect the company's ethos.
Yeah, so that's probably on Alex and I to sell it and to explain to the team again who we are, why we do certain things, how we talk. So again, the big thing about our branding is that we're friendly, we're approachable, we do not use theoretical language, no turtlenecks. We're trying to do things.
Steve Jobs.
Yeah, again, I think people have ideas of architects where they throw things off the table if people don't agree with their ideas, or stamp their feet until they're listened to, and that is not us.
I've been shouted at for no reason, but maybe me.
Well, you shouted back.
Not really. I just stared straight into his soul, and he went back to the office. And this was obviously a director.
Yeah.
I guess there is the Italian blood that when it starts boiling, there's that risk.
Yeah.
Plus, obviously, I was raised by my mum, and she is.
But, you meet such interesting people. Everyone does have a different sort of backstory and a different.
Yeah.
Everyone's got different skills. I think this is again something that I've learned, that you will find really good designers that need help with the sort of organization and the project management, maybe the construction detailing, and then on the flip side, you will have incredible project managers that can detail, can draw, are happy to stand on site and talk to contractors, and there's all the contracts and legals and insurance, and they just absorb all that knowledge. And I'm not sure if you ever get the two combined into a single person. So then again, in kind of business, I guess what's been a really interesting aspect is that Alex and I have to try and create teams. So you put people together that you think will either gel and actually maybe that cover all the skills between 2 or 3 people. So actually someone might be a really good communicator, someone might be someone very sort of design-led, really strong with their concepts and their ideas, and then ultimately you've got someone that is there to deliver it as well. And I think university is a strange sort of pressure where you're told to be the best at everything. And I remember back in our studio that people were really sometimes against each other. Some shared ideas. I felt that I was always willing to share ideas. I don't think I was, I never sort of held my work behind my arms to make sure that no one stole an idea or something. But I think maybe the university environment pits people against each other and wants you to be the best at everything.
It's more that I struggle to see how universities are actually helping students. I really, really am right now, because it's more the competition, it's more the grades that they're valuing than what actually someone can bring to the table. When I started, there was this, one of my professors didn't really believe in me at all, and the other one that was actually the one that I was studying construction design and technologies with, he was so annoyed with me all the time because I'd never really liked to study much. I've always done design, always really good at sketches. I just love to sketch, I really do. And pen and paper, something that I mentioned also with Angela and Liz. When I started, I was with the Vittorio Martini scales and the Rotring pens. That's how I started. And with that professor, I was, just doing design from start to finish, and he was guiding us. Even the silliest mistake, he was actually making fun of us rather than just judging. Obviously, the grades then turned out to be whatever for that particular drawings or project. But even when he was grading us, it wasn't doing it to, in a way, bring us down to say, oh, you've done something stupid, this is not how it should be done. There was really a collaborative approach that I struggle to see right now. That is more, what do you do? Oh, you failed this. And that's it, dies there. No explanation, no further discussion, or not really question asked why. That is, I don't know, I struggle with the universities right now. I don't think they're fully preparing the students for what's out there, outside the universities. There's a challenge. And well, now you're saying this really, that people are just trying to keep their ideas for themselves without sharing it. That doesn't help. This is a little bit the purpose of this place, to share that idea, share that knowledge, maybe inspire someone.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I actually sometimes put grades to sort of one side. I'm not sure if Alex and I really ever look at someone's CV. We obviously get sent CVs and portfolios, and immediately you're looking at the portfolio. You're looking at the work, the thought process that they've gone through. Can they communicate their ideas? And I think sometimes as well, what you hope is that they've looked at who we are before applying. So, look at the types of jobs that we do, sort of understand who we are as a company, and then maybe sort of adapt, their portfolio to suit, to try and sort of sell themselves to sort of, to us. Why should we sort of hire them? But yeah, it's a strange one to, I guess, pick someone out of that university sort of atmosphere of competitiveness and then actually say, you're now part of a team. You don't have to be good at everything. Let's all work together to push the company forward and to build momentum. So I guess it's just another challenge.
Yeah, true. And going back to the company itself and how you approach the client and how you basically see a project, a client comes to you and say, I have this idea, how do you then guide them through?
So we see each project as unique. Every client is different. Every client brief is different. So we try and spend an initial sort of phone call, getting to know them, their reasons behind doing it, and what it is that they'd like to achieve. And each project is a collaboration. So again, we're not going to come to the table with a single idea and tell you for hours that we're right and you're wrong and you need to listen to us. Actually, every project is going to be options, and then within those options, we're going to talk about the positives and negatives of each. And something that I might really enjoy is actually something that the clients don't really see as themselves, living in a certain sort of way. So we sort of work, we need to be told no, as we need to. I always say to them that the clients, they need to find an architect that won't, they feel comfortable to say no to. I don't like that. Can you try again? We don't take it personally. It's a challenge to kind of listen to feedback and to push the project sort of forward. So again, it's just, you can kind of talk about the name. I'm trying to avoid saying delve too much, but delving in, that's kind of where it came about. So spending the time to go through the options to ultimately find the solution that everyone agrees is this is right for that project. So we do all aspects of sort of design and construction. So we would usually describe the sort of 4 steps of a process. So coming up with the overall sort of design or master plan, taking it through the planning permissions that's needed, pre-construction and tendering is that 3rd step, and then ultimately being on site and helping kind of delivery. As the markets have changed, we've had to be flexible within those 4. Obviously, the dream is that someone comes to you and is able to have you on board for all 4. Actually, they might just need you for your initial design skills, and they may have a contractor that can take it forward. They might just want to do design and planning and then sit on it for a couple of years, or again take it forward with someone else or build it themselves. Or they might want your help to detail everything to a point where they have a kind of a fixed price contract with the builder to then build it themselves. Or ultimately, they might just not have the spare time available to be on hand during construction, so ask us to be involved. So we've learned to try and be flexible within people's needs again. So I know there's practices out there that are thinking to sort of reduce their provision to just design and planning, and then actually there are others that are going to focus just on delivery, whereas actually we're happy to, I think our skills are in all aspects of it, and we can, I think we believe in ourselves to I think now we're starting to realise that there's a reason why we're here. You know, we know what we're talking about, and we can help people deliver projects. So yeah, you know,
it's offering that flexibility to the client. It's something I firmly believe in as a business myself or business owner. Although I have 4 type of services, I don't have to offer all 4 of them all the time. I had client that approached me only for the project and cost management. I had client that obviously approached me for the whole thing, so project management, cost management, client rep, and in design. But I also had client that asked me to just be their rep. And it's that flexibility that, in my view, it's crucial as a business grows to still be flexible enough and to get the clients to understand that you're flexible enough, and you know you're there at the end of the day just to help them, and that you're really tailoring, you know, your service to their needs. Even one of my latest clients, let's say, or one of the latest projects I work with on, it started off as a just representative for them at the very beginning. Then it moved on the same house, on the same project, to be the project management and cost management. And then I ultimately worked on another one of the properties where I just offer the full process or the full services. Obviously, that's great. You know, there's more control, there's more the idea that you have at the beginning, either from a design perspective or just how you want to run the project. It gives you more control overall. But at the same time, if someone already has, you know, a contractor or a project manager or a designer involved, I would have no problem whatsoever. It would still be nice for me to work on a project. Obviously, I'm selective. Don't say yes to everything. That comes from experience, from bad experience, but we all have it.
yeah. So I find saying no is the hardest thing, because in the end, I do want to try and help people.
Mm-hmm.
And I really do want to try and help everyone, but sometimes it just yeah,
Can't say much, can
no,
you?
it's tricky. Yeah, it's tricky.
Yeah, but it's true. It's the biggest challenge sometimes that I have is when clients, and again, they're allowed obviously to challenge me. I love it even more because there's room for conversation. But after you, and this goes back in a way to especially regulations more than anything else, more than, you know, design practice or approaches or process, that you get challenged on the regulations and you try to get them to understand this cannot be done. This is not in line with the standards that we have here in the UK, especially coming from, most of my clients are from overseas. In almost 5 years of the company, I had only one client that was from the UK. Everybody else is from overseas, and having to deal with those sort of individuals that come to me, oh, but this is not how it's done, you know, in where I'm from. I was like, okay.
Yeah, I mean, we've all seen it, you know, on Pinterest. There would be this incredible staircase with no handrail, and people say, oh, this is what I want, and you say, okay, fine, but unfortunately, yeah, building regulations in this country will mean that we can't do it, and you battle for hours because they've seen the image.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a challenge, isn't it? What we have found tricky. So you want to offer flexibility, but then for us as a business, there's no confidence in your long-term cash flow projection because someone could pick you up and drop you at any moment.
Yeah.
And I guess that's just what we're starting to sort of get used to. It's just the way of the world now, where you have to wait every stage, every month. You know, so I think, I mean, maybe I'm just seeing it through rose-tinted glasses, but I'm sure in previous practices, you know, someone would pick up the phone, new inquiry, they'd have the budget, and they would, you know, negotiate fees, and they would go through design, planning, pre-construction and construction. You know, a project would be a year and a half long, and you'd have some photos at the end of it to put in the portfolio, and you'd be on to the next one. And yeah, now definitely over the last sort of 18 months, you know, it's design, and then let's stop and consider. Let's get planning, and then we're going to wait 2 years. And how you put that into your cash flow projection. So we want to be we want to try and guarantee that we know what the next 3 months is going to be in terms of invoicing. Month 4, 5, 6 might be sort of at 80, sort of 75%. But then I guess Alex and I, and this is in working with our accountant Phil, we've recognised the pattern that within the sort of the next 3 months, we will win the work to get months 4, 5, and 6 up. So you sort of see this sliding graph, but yeah, month on month, you're bringing in work to sort of push it up. I mean, now you're sort of confident about the next 6 weeks, and then beyond that, there's just a lot of yellow cells on the Excel spreadsheet where we expect there to be fees and there to be project activity, but you just won't know.
Yeah, it's a challenging time. Obviously, I think that's something we're all experiencing, even from speaking with other professionals in the industry. I can't say, so from my point of view, it's just the market will never be, going up. It will eventually in the long run, but it's always going to be, if you zoom in onto that curve, it's always going to be ups and downs. It's how you navigate those down moments that, again, you don't stop, whether it's networking, advertising the company, putting the name out, and really just keeping, just like what you said at the beginning of that business card, that people need to think of you. Oh, maybe there's Ed that can help. It's still that process that even with the time that we're living in, the industry, in general, really, with everything that's going on in the world, I also keep that positive sort of vibe to it, because it's not going to rain forever,
No, I remember saying to myself a couple of times, this is, as a challenge, I'm not going to let the business fail.
Yeah.
I'm going to do what it takes to kind of get it through. And, I guess as a business owner, you have to do it. You have to sort of face up to sort of what's happening and navigate your way through it. If you don't, ultimately, I guess if you sit back and just sort of let this happen, then you won't get anywhere.
Yeah, exactly that. Going back to the design process that you guys have, and especially how, in a way, the industry is evolving, to talk about sustainability, how much are you guys focused on it?
I mean, it's a real passion of us. Still, the question is, can project budgets stretch? So I personally I've renovated a barn in Surrey. We used wood fibre insulation. I used recycle glass, sort of pellets for the insulation under the floor. I've switched to full electric air source heat pump. I use timber frame construction. So, personally, it's a real passion to build in timber and to try and reduce the amount of concrete and steel. I have young kids. Alex has young kids. I think we feel that we have a responsibility as architects to try and be building as sustainable as possible. But I think you are sometimes faced with clients that either it's not high up on their list, or everyone's aware that the budget just won't stretch. Unfortunately, it's still 10, 15, 20% more expensive to build in timber than it is in maybe slightly more traditional sort of methods of brick and block work. So there are challenges that we face, but we're trying to. There's probably a pressure on us in terms of CPD, of sort of continuous learning development, to make sure we're aware of what's out there and what's possible. And we just try. So again, with that initial phone call, somewhere you try and mention and what are your aspirations for sustainability, and you sort of see where it lands. But with our education sort of work, adaptive sort of reuse of empty buildings. So I think that has kind of given us a bit of positivity that you don't need to demolish an existing building. You can adapt it for a new use. Yeah. And then with our private education work, again, just bringing in natural materials, sustainable materials, recycled materials that are sort of low chemical healthy,
Yeah.
promote healthy buildings, just obviously to create kind of better learning spaces and better environments to live and work
And are
in.
they more open to that, to those solutions than, let's say, private residentials clients?
There's a mix. There's sometimes, I guess, I think what we found within the sort of education sector and commercial sector, it's sort of business to business. So it's very much just, this is the budget. Can it work within it? What can you do?
Mm-hmm.
We need to kind of work within it and find solutions. Private residential, I'm sure you know this, is, you're working with someone's house and it's obviously it's very personal to them. So you need to kind of work with their aspirations of what they want it to look like. We sometimes describe what we do as interior architecture. So it's this idea of you pick up the building and turn it upside down. Anything that doesn't move is what we like to get involved in. And so I guess within all of those decisions of the interiors, can you use kind of clay plaster or lime plaster or build in timber? But it's still a challenge just because construction costs are so high.
Yeah.
Again, I remember when we first started, £3,000 a square foot was deemed, high end, and then now, it's crazy to think that now you're scraping that as like just a basic level of construction, and suddenly now sort of high end construction is £500 or £600 a square foot. And then suddenly, you're also seeing the super prime, which is maybe £700, £800 or £900 a square foot. Obviously more if it's lavish interiors. So it's scary where costs are going. Can't quite see it coming down. And I think sometimes the challenge is that maybe land values have increased, but just not as much. So sometimes now, people are buying plots or buying buildings at a certain value, and then the amount that they need to put in, it doesn't quite sort of match up to maybe what it did 10, 15 years ago.
It's I had a project. It's a bit of in the grey area at the moment. Fully designed, ready to go. We also had planning for an extension. The client just decided to stop and to ultimately sell the property as it is, because for them it wasn't a valuable project at the end of the day. But even then, even if whoever will buy and purchase the property will still have to invest that amount of money. And as we went out to tender and we put forward all the budget and everything else, we also had the contractor that was almost selected. The price per square foot was $545. So, and it wasn't necessarily super prime or high end. It was obviously having really, really good quality, but it wasn't an expensive kitchen per se. This was a 400 square meter house, so obviously 5 bedrooms, and you needed to have a large kitchen, but the kitchen itself wasn't too expensive overall, and everything was pretty balanced. Still, when you see the total at the end of the day, what you're going to pay, the client was saying, is it really worth it right now? It's a challenge, obviously, but then again, you try to guide them as much as possible. On this particular project, just going back onto the sustainability, whenever I approach a client, and I just don't necessarily ask them the question on how sustainable a project should be, but I make recommendation if we do this, if we do that, if we do the other. Some of them do understand and are open to at least part of it, or part of the project, part of the elements, the materials and everything else that you might be using, to stretch it a little bit and to use it and to have it on the project. There are some other clients that just not bothered by it at all. How do you guide those that don't see the value of having, let's say they have the budget and they have the funds, but they don't see the value of a sustainable future in a way?
Yeah, that's the challenge, to try and bring people along sort of with you.
Keep in mind, I'm going to hold my hands up. I cook
with gas.
Yes.
Everyone says the flame is better, you get better control. So so
leaving the kitchen, outside all of that.
I think because no one knows quite where it's going to go. So actually, a better EPC rating, will that ultimately end up allowing you to sell your property for more, in future? So you have to probably try and sell it. There's always a fine line, because I think, again, I'm not quite sure about interior designers, but architects always get a little bit of stick that we're there to sort of just push, project values up, or to make things more complicated. And when we're not, there's always situations like, I guess there's always different ways to do things, and I think we're there to explore them to make sure that the right decision is made. I think there's the design and build approach, where let's just get this built as quickly and as cheaply as possible, but you'll end up with a box that everyone is really disappointed with, and you spent a certain amount of money. What we're trying to sort of promote with the work that we do is that if you just take that little bit of extra time and care, the quality will be so much higher, and actually you will have a firm handle and grasp on the costs. So it just, give yourself the time and the breathing space to really consider what you're doing, to make sure you make the right decisions, to then get it fully costed, to again have those discussions. So that's probably, again, something that we've really learned through the last sort of 8 years. You have to talk about the tough things right at the start. So, we try and be really honest about our fees, and then we also try and be really honest about client budgets from the very beginning. And again, I think since the pandemic, we've really seen the value in working with quantity surveyors and getting cost plans done. So it might even be someone's looking at buying a house, they have an estate agent's plans, maybe helping them, just guide them with a couple of bullet points, and then introducing them to a cost consultant who could do a feasibility sort of estimate. At least we're all in the same, suddenly we're on the same level playing field of, this is how much it might be. Does it work for you?
Yeah. And who knows, they might want to, even after seeing a scary number, that what could be a scary number, they might say, what if we stage it? What if we just do this?
Yeah, exactly. So, within our sort of phases of work, you can come up with the master plan, and then you can try and all work together to break it down into manageable chunks that make sense. Again, you don't want to sort of promise someone that it can be phased.
No, of course.
And then they end up having to redo the first bit because it's all been damaged when they've done the second bit. So again, it's more time and thought, but ultimately you're just trying to work with them to get where they need to be. I know some architects out there that they say they've got a certain style that costs a certain amount, and they say this is the cost per square meter rate it is to sort of work with, to get one of our projects. With your budget, your project will be a certain size. If you add more in, it'll be twice or 3 times as big, but ultimately nothing will change. This is the building rate. We try and obviously to be a little bit more flexible, work within their budget and brief, but everyone has to be realistic. I think that's just the current climate.
It's a tough conversation to have sometimes with client, and this happens to me as well, when I explain them what they can actually have within the budget, and they just come back to me and say, but I want to have it all. That's where you really have to fit down and say, you can't.
Yeah, there's no way around it, really, isn't it? That those conversations we'll have. And I think, again, what we struggle with is, I think there are people out there that try and avoid talking about it, sort of win the project and then maybe see it as their role to get you to a point where you're willing to spend that sort of money. Whereas actually, Alex and I want to be incredibly honest with people. And again, it comes back to our values as a company, who we are, and helping people. So, but people get conflicting advice. So then they sort of question, what we're saying compared to what someone else is saying. And
Google. Maybe.
Yeah, maybe. AI, is that destroying things? So we, again, as our branding, so we want to take the time and care to get it right. We are artists, we are designers, we're a design-led practice. So we say from the start, we are not going to be the cheapest company that you could work for. We're not set up in that way. There are people there that they will try and smash work out as quickly as possible to do it as cheap as possible to get you your planning application, within a day. That's not what we've created as a company, and it's not what we're going to compete against. So if someone wants us to sort of compete against a certain fee level, we've learned to sort of say no. We physically can't do it.
Yeah. You won't be able to deliver the same client care that you would otherwise. Yeah.
So you try and be as flexible and as creative, but yeah, there comes a point where it's important to say no, and I think we're learning that year on year, recognizing the situations where actually this isn't worth our time.
If I could leave you with this question, what would be your advice to future architects?
Yeah, it's a tricky one, isn't it? It's taking the time to reflect, I think. This has been a sort of really interesting sort of conversation just to sort of prepare for the last kind of couple of nights, because actually you never take a chance to step back and actually think about where you've come from, what you've done, and then actually what you sort of hope to achieve. But I think the conversation's going is this sort of generalists and specialists, and actually, there's no right or wrong answer between that, but you probably ultimately have to try and just think about your personal goals and what drives you sort of within this sort of subject, and then finding the kind of route for you. But there's no one size sort of fits all, which I think is a great thing about architecture. People can find their own route. They just have to sort of, I guess, take the time and spend the time sort of thinking about what it is they'd like to achieve.
Okay. Ed, thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's been a real pleasure. And yeah, thanks again.
Thank you.